I'm hurting here.
Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Mama. Teresa's here, which must mean that
Hey, Teresa.
Hi. And there's the email. So let's give it just a minute while everybody that just got this email starts coming in.
It gets sent late today.
Yeah.
I keep an email in archive, so since I don't get one, I have mine in archive, so I can always get two.
Hugh was saying that he does the same thing. Oh, hang on just a second. Speaking of, I've got some papers that I printed out.
Lisa, what time are we leaving in the morning?
I hadn't really thought about that. Let's see, the graveside is at 11.
Right.
Do you want me to pick you up about 10:15 or so?
It'll have to be 10:20 or so.
I mean, it can be later than that. It could be, I'll run the directions. I want to allow about 30 minutes to get there, I guess.
Yeah, well, if you'll pick me up about 10:20, I'll be home.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. It's always interesting, I'm sure, that if people follow these original things, if they go and watch the videos, it's always kind of funny because it's, oh, well, there's the leader walking away again, and there's no one here yet, and
okay, I'm gonna lay it down, Susie.
I probably should just record it and then go back and edit it, but I really don't want to have take the time to do that, to be honest with you.
So they can just do like we do. I mean,
I guess it makes you feel like part of the community if you're seeing people that don't exactly have everything all together. So, all right. I think we might have some more people trickle in, but let's go ahead and get started. Let us pray. God, we thank you for this chance to gather here today to discuss your holy word. As we talk about the book of Romans, we ask that we can be inspired by this book that have inspired so many others. In Jesus' name, amen. Yeah. So I prayed that we may be inspired by this book that inspired so many others, because Romans is definitely one of, I would say, the preeminent books of the Bible. It is, especially for us Lutherans, it is very key to what we believe. And what we're going to talk about is why, well, first off, why it was written. And then as we go through it, we'll talk about some of the most important aspects of it. Today, we're going to mostly be doing an overview of the book of Romans. We last week, if you recall, we heard the whole book in its entirety. And we're able to sort of drink from the fire hose that is Romans. And so we're going to begin to break that down a little bit so that we can gain some understanding of, okay, well, this, we're going to look at an outline of, okay, well, makes more sense now, because it is one letter, but it's really broken up into about 4 sections. And it is, and the purpose in which it's written is also very important. And here comes Margaret. But as Margaret's coming in, she faded in. I've never seen that happen. That was kind of cool. So just a couple things. First of all, for those of you who wait patiently for emails, you need to know that the address to this is the same every week. Unlike some of your other Zoom meetings that change, this one does not. And so any previous email, now I know that it may have changed like one time, but now it doesn't. It's the same. So if you have last week's email, it'll let you in this week too.
Does it take a while? Because I tried last week's and I sat here and waited and nothing.
Oh, that's because I wasn't ready.
Okay. All right. Because I did try that. And then I thought, well, that didn't work.
well, what if you see something that says it'll let you in this week? Wait for the host to let you in.
Yeah.
It's working. I just haven't let you in yet.
It didn't even say that. It just said Pastor Stevens.
Oh, I hadn't started it yet, probably because I started it. Usually I can start it about 10 minutes early. Today I was in the middle of getting a PowerPoint ready. And so I didn't start until like 2 minutes until.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's the same.
Okay. All right.
It's always the same. And so, but also something that you need to be aware of is this, and I'm going to share my screen with you all. Let's go here. No, the thing popped down and got in my way. I want to show you all something. It's on the weekly announcements, but LutheranLive.com. It's a secondary, for those of you who don't know, it's a secondary email address for us, but it has something completely different. It used to be just where we had our live streaming, which is right here. So Sunday mornings, if you come here at 10:45, this is going to be streaming. But now it also includes this stuff. So if you go to LutheranLive.com, here's our full Sunday service. There's the sermon, word for Wednesday, the weekly update, and why I'm telling you this now is the Bible studies. So it's not on we're not doing it, and I think we've mentioned this, we're not doing it on Facebook anymore. We're doing it here on YouTube, basically so we can have it here. So this will be a collection of them all. It'll be easy for y'all to find them. Now, if last week's happens to not be here, message me, because one thing about posting it through Zoom is that we have to, I have to go back in and put it in a particular playlist in order for it to get posted there. So sometimes this is new, so sometimes I'll forget to go and post it in the playlist. And so, like I said, if you're behind and you want to watch it, it'll be at LutheranLive.com. So that takes care of that. Now, let's talk about Romans. Romans is the 6th book of Paul's 13 books. Well, the 13 that have at some point been attributed to Paul. He didn't write them all, but it was written fairly late in his career. Okay. And that's important. But what's also kind of interesting is, as I was studying Romans, in comparison to all the other books of the Bible that I've studied along the way, is that usually, if you look at when was a book written, it's usually you'll get not age ranges, but you'll get time ranges. Well, it might have been written between this time and this time, or this time and this time, depending on this and this and this and this. Everything that I read said that this was written in 57.
Yep, mine did too.
I mean, no bones about it, 57, which I think is pretty bold, honestly. But I mean, they nail it down. This is in 57. And so one of the things that we have to look at, okay, then what was going on in 57? And why was Paul writing? And what I discovered, honestly, something that I maybe should have already known, definitely should have been taught before one way or the other, but that I learned in this, is this. So Paul had never been to Rome at this. Well, Paul had never proselytized in Rome at this point. He had not started a church in Rome. Okay. But I want to read you something. This is the book of Acts. This is a reading that we are going to be having in the next few weeks. I think a week from Sunday, 2 weeks from Sunday, 2 weeks from Sunday, I think. This may be the 7th Sunday of Easter. I don't know. We'll find out soon enough when I'm preaching it. But it says, in Acts chapter 2, when the day of Pentecost had come, and there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven living in Jerusalem. At this sound, the crowd gathered and was bewildered, because each of them heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all those who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear each of us in our own native language? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt, and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes." Visitors from Rome. So, at this time in Rome, there was a huge Jewish population. There were a lot of Jews in Rome. Because, not all of them stayed in Jerusalem, and many of them went and lived in the capital city. They lived in Rome. And Rome was, at the time, very open to basically all religions. I mean, they were a polytheistic culture. They had a God for everything. And so, hey, what's one more? And so the Jews came in and they were allowed to be there. And then the Pentecost came. And so some of these Jews who were at Pentecost presumably went back to Rome and started Christianity. And so, I mean, that's sort of the current thought. We don't know that that's exactly what happened, but we know that there were Christians from Rome there that were at the Pentecost event. The Pentecost event was life-changing, clearly, for everyone who was involved. And they went back and started the Christian church in Rome. And so now what also happened was this. As you read Paul's letters, there's divisions a lot of times. And almost all of them, he is addressing some sort of division. What's one of the main divisions that often happens?
Jews and Gentiles.
Jews and Gentiles, correct. Jews and Gentiles. And usually, who's in control? Jews. That's sort of telling the other group this is how it's got to be.
The Jews?
The Jews. Basically, this is our faith and our Messiah, and we're letting you play along. But you got to do it our way. And to which Paul comes back and says, no, not really. This is what's going on. So that started happening. And there was some issues with Jews in Rome. So Emperor Claudius kicked them all out, kicked all the Jews out of Rome. And that happened in about, hang on, I'll tell you. It happened in about to Claudius, that happened before. He kicked them all out from about January 41 to January 53. And so they were gone for about 12 years. And oddly, now this is why I should have known this, not because I've studied so much history, because of this. In Acts 18, it says, after this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. Remember Priscilla and Aquila? Mm-hmm. You know why Paul met them? because they were Jews, Christian Jews that had been kicked out of Rome. So all of the Christian Jews, or all the Jews, Jewish Jews and Christian Jews had all been expelled from Rome. Okay? This is very important because of what happened in the meantime. All of the Christians were not Jewish Christians in Rome. Some of them were Gentile Christians, right? I mean, we know that, I mean, that's typically what happened in all of the Christian churches. They were just Jewish, and then they and then with that they what am I trying to say? Because I just got a text that didn't make sense. So the Jews were gone, but Christianity stayed, but it was run by the Gentiles. Okay. And then in 53, 54, what happened? The Jews came back. And prior to this, they had been the leaders of the church. They had called all the shots because, again, this was born out of Judaism. And in fact, for a long time in the first century, Christianity was seen as a sect of Judaism. It was like a different denomination kind of thing. And so all of a sudden, they're showing back up to Rome where they had left and they had been in charge. And now all of a sudden, things are different. They ain't the ones in charge anymore. It's the Gentiles that are running the show. And this clearly caused some issues. It's sort of like this. If you consider yourself a liberal or a Democrat, do you remember how you felt when Donald Trump won? And all of a sudden, it felt as if your country had, because, most everybody thought Hillary was going to win. And, you went to bed that night thinking, well, Hillary Clinton's going to be our next president. We're going to have a female president, and it's not going to be Donald Trump. And the next morning you wake up and Donald Trump has won. And then, so what you thought was the reality, the rug got pulled out from under you. And the same thing kind of happened in this go round to a lot of those who were in the Trump party. We got this wrapped up, and then all of a sudden Joe Biden's our president. And so what this has caused in churches as well, both times, is a division. I mean, it's not just in our country, it's in our churches. There is a divide, conservatives and liberals. It is very similar to the Gentile and Jewish division that was going on. They were all under one church, under one banner, but they were not all that friendly with each other because they had two very different thoughts on how things were supposed to be, on how things were supposed to go. Now, if that was the only point of Romans, there would be a lot less to it. But there was a reason that Paul wrote this and so much. Because Paul's intention, Paul was not in Rome, he was in Corinth. This was at the end of his third missionary tour, which was his last missionary tour. I guess it was his retirement tour if he was in a rock band. And so, because then from there, he was going back to Jerusalem to drop off all the money that he had raised for the Christian church in Jerusalem. And then his intention was to go to Rome and then on to Spain. Well, he ended up going to Rome and was summarily executed eventually in Rome. He didn't go to Rome like he wanted to. But this book is also, this letter was also intended to be spread past Rome and into Spain. So there's a lot of theological background. There's a lot of talk about this is what the gospel means in the book of Romans. That's why it's become one of our primary the primary epistles for us. I mean, not least of which, this is kind of the one that Martin Luther woke up to. You know, I mean, this was for Luther, this is a huge one. And so as Lutherans, it's a big one for us too. But realize this is the basic background of what it is. Okay. This is sort of the understanding. Now I want to share this with you. Let me get to a reading view. Read mode. All right. Who'd we lose? Did we lose somebody?
Teresa.
Oh, Teresa. She'll be back. So this is the basic outline of Romans. First, you have the introduction. That's the way it is in all of Paul's letters, right? Hey, how are you? Grace and peace. Love you. Mean it. And then he goes, the first part is justification by grace through faith. Well, or justification by faith. Okay. First of all, he starts off with sin and the need of salvation. And then you see it's broken up into two parts, the need of the Gentiles and the need of the Jews. So, so each part is kind of addressed here. And he does that because it's like, you guys are doing this, but wait, you guys are doing this. And so it's sort of like, y'all have heard me say this probably 100 times. If you're a Democrat or you're a Republican and you think your party is always right, you're following your party and not Jesus. And that's kind of what he's doing here. He's saying, hey, if you think you Gentiles are always right, but wait, Jews, not so fast. You ain't got it right either. You both are falling short. And so then it goes to the universal need of salvation. Then justification by faith, the provision made for salvation. It's God's righteousness through faith. And then he uses Abraham as an example. So he's talking about it ain't about works, it's about faith. The reason you do good works is because of faith, not the other way around. And then he starts talking about the freedom that we have, which is the result of salvation. For us, it's always a because, therefore. Because we are saved, therefore, we are free from wrath. We are free from sin. We are free from the law. And we are free from death. And then he goes back to the Jew and the Gentile, the scope of salvation, that God chooses to save believers. Israel chose to trust in their own righteousness, but both Jews and Gentiles can have salvation through faith. Okay? And then after that part, he switches gears and starts talking about, now that you're saved, this is what it looks like in relation to overall conduct, in relation to civil authority, in relation to each other, and in relation to those who are weak. And so this is one of the basic outlines that I found for Romans. So hopefully, if you can recall what we did last week, you'll remember, it sort of comes back to it. So any questions so far? You're muted, Aunt Lisa.
I think you answered this before, but I just wanted to clarify it. This is one letter. The whole book is one letter, did you say?
Yes.
It's a very long letter. And I noticed also that when we were listening to it last week, it mentioned that somebody else wrote it for him.
Yes.
What would the reason behind that be? Is it the length or the ability to write, or what? Do you know why that was?
As a secretary, probably.
Okay.
Basically, he was dictating the letter. In other letters that we don't think Paul wrote, it's obvious that, I mean, there's no claim of I by my own hand am writing this. I mean, and Paul says in some of them, I see what big letters I'm writing in because he wrote it. But by now, you know, he's like, you know, come over here for a minute and let me write down what I say. Maybe he was a quick chiseler. I don't know. But this guy wrote it. And it's funny, in chapter 16, the writer actually gives his own shout outs. You know, Paul says, all right, say hey to this person, this person, this person. And then the guy's like, you know, I wrote this. And so I'm going to throw in a few too, because it's only fair because my hand's killing me. And so I deserve something in this. But it is interesting because that, to my knowledge, that's the only one that somebody else penned. And that in which that is actually acknowledged in the it's actually acknowledged in the thing. So let's dive into chapter 1. Share slideshow. Teresa, in case you were wondering, this is what I was doing when I had not answered the phone or let you in. I was finishing this up. Oh, Teresa's back just in time. Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, set apart for the gospel of God, which he promised beforehand through his prophets in the Holy Scriptures, the gospel concerning his Son, who was descended from David according to the flesh, and was declared to be the Son of God with power according to the Spirit of holiness by resurrection from the dead, Jesus Christ our Lord, through whom we have received grace and apostleship to bring about the obedience of faith among all the Gentiles for the sake of his name, including yourselves who are called to be Jesus Christ, who are called to belong to Jesus Christ. To all God's beloved in Rome who are called to be saints, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. So, anything jump out at you there? Here's something that jumps out to me. If you go to the other, let me just thumb through a few of the other introductions to Paul's letter. Paul, a prisoner of Jesus Christ, to our brother, to Timothy, our brother, to Philemon, our dear friend and co-worker, to Aphilia, sister, to Archippus, our soldier, grace and peace to you. When I remember you in my prayers, I always thank God because I hear of your love. All right. Now, Ephesians. Well, that's not a good one because that one's questionable. Galatians. Paul, an apostle, sent neither by human commission nor from human authorities, through Jesus Christ of God, to all the members of God's family who were with me, to the church in Galatia, grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ, whom gave himself for our sin, set free. I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting the one. And so he gets real personal off the bat, right? But here, it's not. And even the next sentence, first I want to thank God for all of you because of your faith is proclaimed through the world. For God, whom I serve is with spirit, by announcing this gospel of his Son, is my witness. And, you know, but it's very almost businesslike, you know, There's no personal, there's no warm fuzzies or even cold shoulders in this. Whereas all of Paul's other letters, or for the most part, you can tell of a relationship that he has with them. That is absent here because, again, he doesn't have one. Now, what we'll see in later chapters in the end is he did have a relationship with some of the people there, but that wasn't because he hung out with them in Rome. And so it's also interesting that by now we know how much influence he is having on the Christian church, period, because why in the world, that would be like me writing a letter to First Lutheran Church in Greensboro telling them how they need to be. There are people there that I have relationships with, but what say do I have over that church? None. But now if Tim Smith, the Bishop of North Carolina, wrote a letter there, or if Jenny Abisher, the Bishop of South Carolina, wrote a letter here, we're going to step back and listen. We're going to read this. So long as this is not a form letter. But we're gonna check out what's being said there. Here, we know again that Paul must have had a great deal of influence in those communities by now, because he is able to write this letter and receive it. And they received it. And clearly they received it because we have it now. It's not like, Uncle Frank working in a church office, how many things get thrown in the file 13 that come into the church office. We're just inundated with mail, and some people would not even consider junk mail. But there's so much of it, I get church newsletters from here, there, and everywhere. I don't read them all. I don't often read ours. I kind of know the announcements. Don't tell Robin. But the truth is, this one stuck, and it's been passed down to all of us forever. So let's keep going. Unless anybody has any questions about the introduction. All right. I started reading this, but I'll read it again. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is proclaimed throughout the world. For God, whom I serve with my spirit by announcing the gospel of his Son, is my witness that without ceasing I remember you always in my prayers, asking that by God's will I may somehow at last succeed in coming to you. For I am longing to see you so that I may share with you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. Or rather, so that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that I have often intended to come to you, but thus far have been prevented, in order that I may reap some harvest among you, as I have among the rest of the Gentiles. I am a debtor both to Greeks and barbarians, both to the wise and the foolish, hence my eagerness to proclaim the gospel to you also who are in Rome. So what do you hear there? I'll let you read through that again. All right. Anything jump out at you there? questions that you may have, comments?
Who were the barbarians?
Paul describes the world as Roman orators saw it, divided into more or less civilized peoples. I guess in the first century, there were civilized nations and not so civilized nations. Because we're looking at the beginning of, I am sure that there were some outlying places that were a whole lot like the bushes of Africa. And and by that, I want to say that barbarians were usually how they were referred to as people that didn't believe in much of anything. But I could be wrong about that. And that's basically just from movies that I've watched against the barbarians. Warlike countries that are they're not civilized, and so that's I guess there was a separation there. What else?
He's very eager to meet them.
Yeah.
He puts that right out there, and I mean it's very evident, and I like the fact it talks about that he wants to share let's see, what was it, a spiritual gift with them, and that they could be encouraged by each other's faith.
I really like that.
Reading.
I really like that. And y'all may not be aware of this. Our mission statement is we share gifts to show God's love. And that's exactly what Paul wants to do there. Yeah. He also sort of stops himself. And I think this is when you can tell somebody else is writing what he's saying, because he sort of backtracked a little bit. I want to share my gift with you. But you know what? No, we'll share it with each other. Because, as if to say, I think he did not want to diminish who they were at that point, because again, didn't have a relationship with them. Didn't want to come off as, I'm a lot better than y'all and you need to listen to me. But it was very much of, I want to share this with you, but I want you to share with me as well. Because honestly, whatever they had also done in Rome was being very successful. The Christian church was growing. And look, if you look at the history of Christianity, Rome is still where the Vatican is. And so it's stuck in Rome. Christianity was for a long time, Rome was the Jerusalem of Christianity. And so this church was established. And Paul really wanted to see it for himself, but probably also, it's sort of like if you're going to, whatever it is that you do for a living, if you were a teacher, whatever it is, you go to somebody else's business to check it out, to learn from them. Well, how are you doing it? What's so successful here that you're doing? I'm sure there's some of that with Paul too. He wanted to see that, because again, this was the Gentile church that he really had nothing to do with. But again, it's also says a lot for Paul. It wasn't about him. And he made that very clear. He was excited that they were there. That things had been going so well. And so mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. He talked about he had wanted to come, but he had been prevented. And, reading the book of Acts, you can see some of the reasons that he was prevented. Shipwrecks and illnesses and all this stuff. And now he wasn't that far from him because he was probably in Corinth. But he had to go back to Jerusalem at this point. And that was his intention. And then he comes back in. Let me go back to the screen. Unless anybody has any other comments on that part.
Well, what I had noticed is, you talked about the fact that it didn't seem like a typical letter.
Yes.
And when I read, starting at verse 14, and I looked at the things that, when you had the outline, he talks about in Romans, talks about sin, salvation, grace, faith, righteousness, justification. And he says that he is obligated both to Greeks and non-Greeks. And that is why he's so eager to really, it's like a whole summary of what the gospel is all about instead of being a friendly letter.
Yes.
And he says it's because he obligated both to Greeks and non-Greeks and to wise and foolish. So he's sort of explaining why this is not his typical friendly letter, but he's trying to sort of clarify and give everybody what they all need, but everybody doesn't need the same thing.
Yeah.
So he's summarizing, he's telling everybody, and some of them he know it better than others.
Yeah. Well, and you know what I also noticed is the word debtor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what he's saying here is, I think the gifts that have been shared with him and the things that he's learned from Greeks, and I think the use of barbarians was important there because basically you would think uneducated, ruffians, that even those people have taught him, both to the wise and to the foolish, that he's in debt to these people. And that, hence my eagerness to proclaim the gospel is I want to learn, I want to grow in my faith too. And that's how it happens, through community and extending that community, because that's something that Paul had been able to experience, is faith being grown in different places.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God for the salvation to everyone who has faith, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed through faith for faith. As it is written, the one who is righteous will live by faith." Let's just focus on that for a little bit. I'll read it again. "For I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God for the salvation to everyone who has faith, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed through faith for faith. As it is written, the one who is righteous will live by faith." Let's talk about that. What does anything strike you there?
Well, he says to the Jew first and also to the Greek. So it sounds like I guess maybe they're more important. The Jews are more important than the Greek, or stronger, or what?
Oddly enough, and for the few of us here that, this came from the Jews. And so first the Jews and then to the Gentiles. And again, every time Paul was on his missionary trips, he started with the Jews. He gave them the opportunity first. So did Jesus, by the way. He started with the Jews, and then he would go see the Gentiles. And it's a little tough for us, I think, to hear sometimes that that God picked a favorite. we talked about that in Lutheran Men Bible study last week, that God kind of picked a favorite. And of course, that's where the whole Old Testament was written from the Jewish standpoint. I mean, God would say, all right, y'all go kick those people's butts. Good job. And if they won, it's because God had them win. If they lost, it's because God was punishing them. But either way, God was cheering for them to be victorious. And so also remember that Paul was a Jew. So, and too had his opportunity first. I mean, he had chosen to persecute the Christians rather than to go along with Christ. Of course, Christ had different plans for Paul, but still it was in that order. What else hops out to you and makes you go, Personally, I'm really intrigued by verse 17. For it is the righteousness of God is revealed through faith for faith. What do you think that means? I think it alludes to this: the righteousness of God through faith, which means that we receive this righteousness through faith in God, which is not something that we do on our own. It is because of the faith that God gives to us for faith. So our faith is strengthened. The faith and trust that we have is strengthened through the faith that we're given. It's cyclical. But in all of it, God is the giver. But then we become the actor in that. It's given through faith for faith. Through trust, so that we can trust even more, so that we can live it out, so that we can be righteous. As we'll hear later on about Abraham's faith being reckoned to him as righteousness. All right. So why don't we stop there? Because if we go on any farther, we're digging into a whole new. If you look at that, if you look at the outline that I showed earlier, that's kind of where it picks up in 18. So let's start in 18 next time. Are there any questions or comments or complaints? Silence. Well, all right then.
But it's not about this.
Okay.
Brian, did you used to wear glasses?